And accusations of racism surrounding a professor at Western Michigan University.
Fox 17 featured him last year while he was bicycling to raise awareness for the Black Lives Matter movement. But since then, our Lauren Edwards has heard from a former student who told her she experienced something much different.
Catherine Pleer, among the hundreds of people in Chicago's Chinatown protesting the rise in hate crimes against Asians and Pacific Islanders.
Racial slurs and violence against one of us are unacceptable attacks on all of us.
A statement that hits home for Pleer, who says she felt targeted as a student at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo.
You know, I feel like my story has been thrown away.
Pleer graduated in summer 2020, but she says her story to fight for change will never leave her.
All of this started with hearing Trayvon's story. And Trayvon Williams is a black student who came out with an open letter about his experiences with racism inside the WMU School of Music program.
Like being called the N-word by his peers, turning to his professor, Greg Jaspers, for help to intervene on multiple occasions in similar circumstances, and feeling dismissed each time. These experiences Williams detailed in this letter that went viral last fall, stating, quote, "The racism I encountered from you and your students were disgusting and traumatizing. I never felt so disrespected and degraded in my entire life."
And it got even worse to that. So hearing about Trayvon Williams' story made me really want to tell mine as an Asian female who would dare to take upon leadership roles.
Pleer says she and Williams were the few students of color in the music program. During Pleer's junior year, she was named music producer for a major production, a position she was proud to hold.
And at every turn, people were yelling at me, fighting me, not giving me the benefit of the doubt, whereas my white peers who were saying the exact same thing in the exact same voice tone from the exact same position were being somehow honored for all of the work that they were doing.
She says this was the kind of environment Jaspers fostered often. She recalls one instance when she pointed out a vocal blending issue in class.
And he stood up and he yelled full lung, "I'm leading rehearsal," storms out of the room, and then comes back into the room to say to one of my white male peers, "You take the rehearsal and lead it instead."
Pleer says she was shocked by the behavior, but it wasn't until he started to portray himself as an ally to people of color that they felt the need to speak up.
This is my first ride today since we cleared $10,000.
Greg's hashtag Biking for Black Lives Matter was really hard for us to see, and it was actually really the fuel that started Trayvon's letter after all of the experiences that he had.
Back in July 2020, Fox 17 aired a story about Jaspers' effort to bring awareness to the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, at that time, we were unaware of the alleged incidences and experiences that the students of color had with him, but it was that story that aired that triggered Pleer to write a letter as well.
In this letter, I will be sharing my experiences as the only Asian female vocalist in the jazz studies program with sexism, racism, and emotional abuse.
And bullying occurred, she says. Pleer says 22 other students and faculty members signed it in solidarity. She and Williams tried rectifying the problem together.
We started with having multiple conversations that were private with Greg, trying to talk with him about our experience, how it had hurt us.
But she says he gaslighted them. She then reported her experiences to the school's Office of Diversity and Inclusion and the AAUP, the teachers union, which led to a 6-month investigation ending in February 2021.
And they essentially threw out all of our evidence and throughout our story and said, well, there's no evidence of discrimination because now we have the power of the investigation and we're going to choose not to listen to your story.
This is the email she received. Pleer was devastated. Kim Tran, who's an anti-oppression consultant and researcher in California, says sadly it's pretty common.
One of the issues within these claims, when students file them, staff file them, is that we're looking for intentionally motivated, explicit forms of racism. And race plain and simply doesn't work that way.
She says studies have shown the emotional and psychological burden students endure when confronting racism on campus.
I don't want to bring this up because this person holds a tremendous amount of power. They have my grade. They have the rest of the semester or quarter dynamic in the classroom.
And students fear being retaliated against. Tran wrote about it in this article, How to Call Out an Offensive Professor, highlighting that a study at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign showed that of the 4,800 students surveyed, 40% felt uncomfortable in the classroom because of their race. She says it's like that on most college campuses, but she believes school officials have a responsibility to change that.
I want universities to have robust anti-discrimination and harassment policies.
Fox 17 reached out to Jasper for a comment on the allegations against him, and he says in part, quote, Western Michigan University's Office of Institutional Equity conducted a thorough investigation, and the claims of Catherine Pleer were not supported by the record. The concluding letter states that I was, quote, not found to be responsible for protected class discrimination. As for myself, I abhor all forms of discrimination, racial or otherwise. I am a gay man and not unfamiliar with the damage and hurt caused by discrimination. My commitment to listening and learning in order to do better remains steadfast. Still, Pleer wishes Western had done more in her situation. In March, she shared her story with the school's Board of Trustees. But she hopes ultimately her journey inspires others to speak up when faced with discrimination.
I wanted students in the future to be able to have their stories heard and have real action be taken in order to protect the students that are experiencing discrimination.
Lauren Edwards, Fox 17 News.
And Western Michigan University also released a statement saying in part, quote, WMU is committed to providing an educational environment that embraces respect and inclusion. This is more than words. We're taking action. For example, the School of Music is in the process of developing a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic action plan, which will engage faculty and also engage external DEI expertise, end quote. For the full statement from both the school and that professor, you can head to fox17online.com.